Leadership is the art of giving people a platform for spreading ideas that work. Welcome to DC Local Leaders, the podcast where we talk to C-suite leaders within the DC area. Our guests share their pathways to success and the important moments that impacted their careers. Lean in as we get the inside scoop on how they are shaping their industries, how they lead, manage, and connect with others. From the sectors of aerospace, defense, tech, IT, and more, this is Local Leaders. Your host has been making meaningful connections with industry leaders for over 15 years. Here's Philip Nathram.
All right, DC Local Leaders, welcome back. Thanks so much for tuning in. We're back with another great episode. Today we're going to be talking with Russ Berkoff. Russ is a West Point graduate, former Special Forces, and now president and CEO of StealthPath. StealthPath is a cybersecurity and privacy company. They specialize in zero trust. He shares a little bit of information about exactly what that means and takes us through some of the cool things that StealthPath has been up to for the past few years as a startup company. And then we get into him. We get into all those lessons that he's learned from West Point on leadership and what shaped him as an individual throughout his career and how he's mentoring others and some of his practices. We get into a discussion about cryptocurrency and where privacy is all around us. So we have a great time on this episode, and I'm really excited to share it with you, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Thank you so much to everyone who's been liking and sharing all of our information and all of the comments and reviews we've received. Definitely be on the lookout, please, for the website. A new iteration of that website is coming up, dclocalleaders.com. That should be live within the next week. We've also do have our Instagram page up, so you can follow along with many of our posts on our upcoming guests and current and past guests. So please take a look at those. And don't forget to tune in to Talk Tech with NVTC. We've partnered with NVTC to host a series of online Tech Talks or Talk Tech with NVTC, and it's a video series, so you can see it on our YouTube page. You can see it on NVTC, that's Northern Virginia Technology Council. You can see it on their page. And this month we are talking to Virginia Tech Innovation Campus. Last month we talked to the CTO of Appian Corporation. We've got a number of cool guests coming up where you can actually get some info about some of the pretty innovative things that are going on in our area. So be on the lookout for that. Thanks so much for everyone tuning in, and let's get into the episode. Here with Russ Berkoff today, and thanks for coming in, Russ. Russ is the head of a company called StealthPath, but he's also former military, NSA. He may not be able to tell us too much about what he did there, but he's just got a great story, and we were actually just chatting before we got started here, and we're talking a little bit about leadership, and really excited to talk to you about just your experience.
Right. No, same. Glad to be here.
Yeah.
One of your questions in here was talking about, getting engineers, how to become, if they want to be a leader and how to move up. And I work with a bunch of engineers in our group. And, it's kind of funny. They're a different crowd. I tease them. They're like squirrels chasing shiny objects, and they would engineer all day long. But, these guys, some of them I think are, definitely brain matter's all there, definitely smart. Just got to get them into roles that will give them responsibility. And, some don't like it. Some are 9 to 5 or we work 18 hours a day, but they want to just do engineering stuff. They don't want to be in charge of the group.
Right.
Okay. And so you kind of want to find who wants to actually be in the charge of the group. Now, I've worked with some engineers that have come over to the business development side. And you talk about going to the dark side. They were looked down upon then by the engineering class, as like, you sold out.
Traded or something.
Yeah.
That's an interesting thing to remember, is that sometimes people just choose to be, doing what they're doing.
Yeah. A funny story I read it in the Steve Jobs book, and him and Woz, they were going at it, building the Apple. And Wozniak's father was a big time engineer. I think he was either with Lockheed or Northrop or somebody out there in California. And his father had like no respect for Stephen Jobs because he was not he maybe had the mind of an engineer, but he was doing all the marketing and all that other stuff. So it was really interesting because engineers progress society. So what you're doing over here, that's not an engineer job. You're not progressing it. And then you circle that back when I took over my first company as president and CEO of the PTR group. I got there and it was a bunch of engineers. And I said, well, do we have a strategy? So we didn't. So we put together a strategy, business strategy, and we went through all that. And they literally came up to me and said, "Holy cow, we had no idea, what the impact of a strategy."
What were they doing before with no strategy? If they were, they had clients and they were
like a lot of people in town, is they kind of run to who they know, and they came out of an agency or something, and then they sell back into that agency, but not to understand kind of the context of the business flow and what programs are coming out and being able to do all that. And I don't know that they didn't do that, but and because they were kind of small, it's easy to get tactically distracted, running the business.
Yeah.
But having the strategy, you almost got to ask yourself, what do we want to be when we grow up? What kind of reputation do we want to have? What areas do we want to specialize in? And so I think that's a very important dimension. Engineering, I think, is, I really had the benefit. I went to West Point. West Point's an engineering school, but I didn't really practice engineering. Then when I got to this company, I had a world-class CTO. That's where I learned about high technology and doing in real-time embedded and distributed technologies. And that's great. That's very interesting. A lot of room for innovation. People sometimes get transfixed. They get limited, by their customers. So you end up, maybe the innovation is not as great as you'd like to do it. And that's why some guys get either burned out or want to go do something else. Actually, that's some of the way we attract people to our startup, is because we're doing actually cutting edge technology in the cybersecurity space.
For the same clients, though, for the same government agencies?
Different. Yeah, well, they eventually will be, because we have a product that will go across all agencies.
Yeah.
Guys want, if you're an engineer, what stimulates you? You want to solve new problems. You want to learn from, good people doing, solving problems. You're going to constantly be, I think, thrust into learning stuff. So, but the engineers I talk to, we're talking about leadership. You have to push yourself out of a comfort zone. The engineering becomes a comfort zone. But, when you're growing up in high school, those are these other guys in the business classes, or the other guys in the management classes, or the other guys that were, doing, maybe emotional intelligence classes or something. So those are, I think those are all important aspects. But the neat part about being an engineer coming into wanting to be a leader is that you do understand the engineering component. What does the developers need if you're developing, and understand all those nuances. I think that's important, but you really start changing your spots. You're trying to round yourself out. You're going to move away from engineering. You're going to move towards some level of business development, because you have to understand that. You're going to look at your organization. You have to have a business plan. You have to develop a strategy. You have to start going out and socializing with, other colleagues, and not just the colleagues, but your counterparts in other companies and things like that.
Yeah. But I think those are just skill sets, right? I think we were talking earlier about, you just got to put that engineer, if they do have the desire to make it into leadership, or I don't know why I feel like it's a jump, right? That there's some sort of bridge to jump over, just like, I guess, if you were not an engineer, there'd be a hurdle to jump over to learn. But just quickly, I would say it's not that they don't understand it. When you read something in school, in a book, you understand it, but it's the practical application that is really, the real leap. I think that's the real leap, is to understand working with other people, developing. And so, reading all day long, textbook, everything. I've seen this happen before. Folks showed up and they gave a textbook answer. Beautiful. That was the answer. That was the easy part. Yeah. It's the execution
and how the organization absorbs this and buys into it, and in doing that.
Yeah, and I think giving up on the idea of needing to be right at all times too, right? Or just having to prove the point. It's
you have to keep your ego in check is good.
Yeah.
It's. I always like to say that I want the best idea to win the day. I think that's healthy to have that environment. You don't want to shut anybody down from having any kind of opportunity. I mean, I actually don't want yes men. I've got guys in our company literally that and that was something I brought when I was in Special Forces and the Green Berets. Is that no one agrees with you anytime. Everybody's got they're so opinionated and strongly opinionated. You got to listen, and that's a key skill is listening. Regardless of at least they want to be heard, whether you go with it or not. So.
Is that where you say? Is that where you think you might have learned a large part of your leadership skills?
Oh,
in the military, especially.
Yeah, I mean, even starting out at West Point, you start from day one. I mean, that's really kind of a leadership laboratory, and you get little responsibilities here. You got to learn how to follow before you lead. That's all good. You learn to be humble. Going into special operations, I went in as a senior officer, like a senior captain. And, there's a lot of younger guys there, and you just got to learn to be a private first. And the complexities, the sophistication of the thinking and what's going on, the physicality of what's going on. I mean, you can't walk 25 miles and don't do it, not be in good enough shape to be able to fight at the other end of that and be able to,
right.
So you got to lead men doing that, and you got to, got to handle different, situations. I think for the leadership part also in Special Forces predominantly, because you do a lot of strategic support. You support a lot of the different theaters strategically in some mission or some way, shape, or form. We call it a complex leadership model, where you're basically, want to give good guidance and give good descriptions and kind of intent of what guys need to do, and then you turn them loose. So, you have to have faith. You have to give good guidelines. Everybody's talking, and, you got to be able to let these guys go run their own operation.
Taking that into StealthPath and some of the other things that you've done, how's that helped you kind of set up that same sort of procedure or that same sort of structure within your culture, or just? Sure.
I have a lot of respect for the engineers, those guys that we had. I mean, this is the beginning of a startup. I came on board 2 years into it. So we had to have the engineers on board that were completely focused, but the real innovation leadership was really what I was looking for, that I brought in from some people that I knew, some colleagues, some friends of mine. One was a former White House presidential fellow for cybersecurity, worked at General Motors. He brought in another guy that worked at General Motors as a CTO. Ran Ally Bank, essentially, developed their digital products. So we brought guys in from big companies that had the full experience, understood what it was like to have 1,000 engineers versus 6, but they knew what the end state needed to look like, and they knew how to get there and how to do that. And then we run a pool of our engineers out of North Carolina, and we're feeding off of a lot of the finance industry out of Charlotte. Mm-hmm. And so there's a very, very talented group. I've seen a lot of stuff, guys that want to do cutting edge stuff. It just so happens that the guy that I brought in that was a presidential fellow, he's a real visionary. And, we started down this path, the zero, stealth path, but the zero trust path. And zero trust is emerging to be a bigger deal than ever. Especially after the SolarWinds attack that you recently heard about. And so he actually started his career. He was a West Pointer also, and started his career in the nuclear command and control space. And so he had a phenomenal foundation of really how to, approach the kind of networks and, the kind of things that were espoused by other zero trust people is never trust and always verify.
Is that what zero trust means?
Never trust, always verify. But everybody's putting their own spin on it these days.
Yeah.
Whether it's zero trust or not, they put in zero trust. We do zero trust. The beauty about what we did, and we took our thought leadership and we led with that, and we built this model that was a capability and maturity model that allows, that is agnostic to product. So you don't have to our products fit into it, and we use the model to innovate from the products for our products. So what it does is, because everybody has invested a ton of money, and they bought Cisco and Microsoft and Palo Alto Networks and everything else. So there's a ton of money that's been spent out there. A lot of guys have been reporting green lights, but you can't report a green light when you get hit by solar winds. You gotta back up and kind of, hey, maybe we need to approach this differently. Our model, allows you to use all these other products and assess your capabilities, and then take a look at your risk around the gaps that you have from the model. And then our particular products, which is our main product is called Z Alert, which is spectacular, allows you to pretty much fill a lot of those gaps in that model. But the zero trust piece, what we do is we're able to check every single communication between every endpoint in the network all the time. So it's not a perimeter once in. A lot of people are calling it zero trust, and we really check the perimeter. Perimeters, that's not working. Even the defense in depth is okay, but it's just not really working. And once someone gets in, they figure out a way to get credentials, and they start moving laterally and moving around and starting to see what's going on and stealing things. In our case, we are checking these all the time, helping you get to a steady state. So what is a normal behavior for your network, and then being able to report any anomalies that come up. And so we're doing what they call continuous monitoring. And there's no other product that we've seen out there that does a continuous monitoring like we do, 24/7 all the time on what's going on, and then report those anomalies. So when you get down to that, you want something granular. And if you're not, it's hard. We basically say you're not really doing zero trust if you're not doing continuous monitoring.
And so how many people do you have in your company total now?
Total, including our 1099s, we have 23.
Does everyone have military experience that's within your organization, or did you seek that out on purpose? Or
No. There was no prerequisite for having any kind of military. It was really your expertise of what you brought to the table, and your desire to drive forward and with the company and what we're doing.
You mentioned something earlier that, especially for a lot of small businesses, especially in the tech space, and especially those that are servicing the federal government as a client, that it's important to know what you want to be when you grow up.
Yeah.
What did you? I think I know what you meant by that, but what did you mean by that?
Well, it's really you can do a mission. You want a mission statement, and you want to be able to have the organization oriented to some place, so you know what you're doing. There's a lot of companies that are chasing 25-meter targets, and they're making money. But I actually resented that when there was one company I went to. They call them a butts and seats company.
Yeah. Staff augmentation.
Right?
Kind of
Staff augmentation, and it's like we have no product. What do we do well? There's really nothing. So what do we hang our hat on? Or we're ethical. We're got good spirited people. No one's been in jail lately.
Yeah.
Something like that.
And you're small, right?
Yeah.
You're a small business, so it's like, oh well, we get to say we worked with the small business, but you're kind of
right. So, I always wanted something that we could hang our hat on, some kind of focal point. Not to say, there's people in town that've made millions of dollars doing butts and seat work, But to me, I wanted something I think more tangible and for a focal point. We want to, for StealthPath, we're looking to be the security and operations behavioral management for any high available industry. And that's ubiquitous right now. That could be any industry right now. And we're specifically focused right now with the critical infrastructure and in utilities and defense. And then our next leap will be into healthcare. I think healthcare can be just as big as any of those right there.
Well, and so when you're putting that together, there's certain inflection points as a business.
Yeah.
How do you manage getting from one to the next? And then what I've heard in the past is that the leadership has to become a different style of leader or learn how to be a different leader as they go through different inflection points. Because, let's say from, 0 to 10 million, or maybe even say 0 to 15 million, you're a certain type of company and you can be a certain type of leader and get a certain kind of thing done. But let's say when you're a $30 million company or a $50 million company, it's a different game.
No, you're absolutely right. So you get more complex. The sophistication increases. You have to formalize more functionality in your organization. So as you get bigger, you might have to bring in an HR person. You hire more marketing people. You start bringing up the sales. As a startup, everybody's wearing many different hats. So the functionality is still there, but it's the same people. Okay.
Right.
And then as you increase in money and sophistication because you're going after bigger contracts, you need teams of people to do stuff. And that's where, it is a different leadership style. And you do have to realize that, and you do have to evolve yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I would think with your military experience, you're pretty good at delegating and managing teams of people that also have teams of people.
Yeah.
But now you're a little bit further removed from the people. When you're a smaller company, you get to affect everyone.
Yeah.
To be a part of their daily experience, but you no longer get that. How does that make you, like, as a leader, what does that do? I mean, or how do you get the people that you lead to do the same thing?
I mean, if you talk to other small companies and they're bigger now or medium sized, and I remember, Joe, we used to sit down at the diner, we drank coffee, we made all the decisions for the company, and that was, those are the good old days. Now you're hopefully bringing on quality people that you can give guidance to, and they can give you feedback from the line. But I found throughout my career, especially in the military, that the thing that we really wanted was good guidance. Well thought out guidance. Number one. And number two, the Army has a concept called commander's intent. Really, what is 2 levels above you doing? Where are they trying to go? And that's kind of like use a purpose, means, and end state kind of model to think about that. And I think it's very helpful, because you're talking to those subordinates that have to, walk out and execute something, and you want to make them accountable, and you want to be able to hopefully be able to articulate what that end state we're all looking for.
Yeah, well, it sounds like that's how you're building that culture in your company. I mean, if you had to put a name to it, what do you think? Say like 3 things that would describe your culture.
I think innovative. I think that's really the attractiveness of everybody that's coming. Collaborative, I think, is huge. Is the other key trait, and then unity of effort. Yeah. It all is synergistic. For this kind of, and you gotta. It's funny, it's like guys spinning plates on sticks, you got to keep all the plates going all the time. So those are the key ones, though. I think, the essence of what you're doing is innovation. You can't really be that successful in doing that and part of the unity and have a unity of effort without collaboration and good collaboration. So that's the kind of synergy I think that I've tried to achieve at StealthPath.
All right. Well, I think anyone listening has got a good snapshot of StealthPath.
Yeah, good.
But I want to talk about you.
All right.
You as an individual, we talked about your military experience, and you've done a couple different things and worked for some government agencies, NSA, and I think so you had many different responsibilities, but you've continued to grow as a leader. But, what are you doing? Like, how do you maintain a certain mindset and the motivation to continue to do that?
Yeah.
You have a morning routine. Like, what's your day look like?
Oh, my day, it's probably unsensational compared to, some of these other guys are some are pretty aggressive. But me personally, I could have left the military, changed my uniform, put on a suit, and walked in and done the same thing. Like, there's a lot of folks that do that. They just don't, that's just how they're moving on. That was different for me. I wanted to seek out challenges and put myself in uncomfortable positions. And that's what I look at on my career. My resume looks like that on LinkedIn. I've gone in. This is my second president's job and CEO. I've done different things where I constantly put myself in that challenging position because my real driver is learning. If I can't be in something where I'm learning, then I have a real problem with that. So that was kind of my drivers that pushed me forward. Is being in these challenging environments meant learning, and I like that. And then you just start building all that up in your own bag of tricks, along with everything you did in the military. And now, you actually can really figure out who you want to be, and where you leverage that. That's what I'm doing with StealthPath. Is I'm moving, trying to grow something out of nothing.
Yeah, it all adds up, right? We hear that message a lot. That it all adds up. That whatever you're doing. You can take something away from it, and every experience you have is a learning opportunity. And I spoke to some people recently, and there's a few books out there that talk about their careers being more of a jungle gym than it is a ladder, right?
Absolutely. And there's something to say about diversity and get exposed, but there are a lot of commonalities. the things, people learn in the military, and they talk about, well, did they transfer over? I've seen, the military uses different decision-making templates. Then you go to Franklin or Franklin Covey, and they have their way of doing stuff. And all. It's almost the same stuff, just renamed, repackaged. And so you start seeing all that because I've been exposed to all that. And, so you find that successful people have some kind of blueprint or template that they've been using that is, what's pretty much the same. Like, what does the military do? It's not Mars. They don't have a magic secret. And then you go over to a big company like maybe Goldman Sachs or something like, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to, check this out. What are the logistics around it? Who's in charge of this? I mean,
Yeah, it's fun. So the more I do with like leadership and the more books I read, and I'm a big, a lot of yoga, a lot of spiritual growth, a lot of personal development, a lot of therapy, a lot of psychology books. What I've been learning is that human beings are hackable, but the idea that there's a certain way that we could develop our mindset and our thought process to be successful, and it carries over from the military, large companies, small companies. The process is going to be the same, and actually you read enough books on personal development, leadership development, psychology. It's all the same message, just packaged in a different way that may resonate with the reader slightly different from the other one, and that's okay.
Yeah. Sometimes the military is more formal because they have to be, because you're dealing with people that might have to make split-second decisions on people's lives.
Yeah.
So it's got to be a little bit more structured, more regimented, but and that's where, military people, when they cross over into the civilian, I mean, that you can almost feel sometimes the intensity is the same, but, there's no life or death. But you have deadlines, you have, you're trying to move the needle. And so it's good to come in with structure. It's good to have these templates. I think that the other big thing about a lot of those templates, though, is you can't stop thinking. So you just not one size fits all. Right. It's a guide, and you need to look at those. Right. The context of your situation, your environment, what's going on, might change. In fact, someone might make sure you have you have a culture or an environment where if someone has something to say, they can say it. That's going to hey, maybe we should do this differently this time. So you can make those adaptations.
Yeah, they don't feel like they can't speak up or something like that.
Yeah, that's bad. That's not what you want. You really want you want it to be a collaborative, collective effort. A lot of times, in the military, sometimes it's like, hey, I don't need a consensus here. We got split-second decision, and this is what we're going to do, and let's go do it. You do want to, though, if you have the opportunity, make sure that you have the listening, because you have a lot of senior people in the enlisted ranks or the non-commissioned officer ranks that want to, you want to get their experience. You want to get their perspective on this. I remember I was a young lieutenant, and, you come in, you're very idealistic, you're very hard charging, and like, let's take that hill. And the other senior NCO, I say, well, sir, maybe that's not the best way. Maybe we should try this. So you got to make sure. Those are early lessons learned for me. That listening is probably the most important characteristic to begin your leadership track or path. So
you've got enlisted folks that are actually more experienced in certain things than some of the officers that they're reporting.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. How does that cause any sort of? Do you have to learn how to navigate that on both sides? I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in the Army, it's an interesting relation. It's kind of a give and take. The Special Forces is kind of funny. The enlisted will do everything. The NCOs will do everything, and pretty much the officers in charge of rapport. Just get out of our hair. Or the beauty of that is, I can turn to my senior sergeant major and just say, hey, look, I didn't see the guys were shooting that well. That's all you had to say. They set up a whole training program, whole plan. They put somebody in charge of it, and now we're working on that. So, very talented group, a lot of experience, a lot of maturity. And so if you're smart as an officer, you leverage that because it allows you to do a lot of things right the first time. Mm-hmm. And that's what you want. You don't want to not have that kind of venue open up for you, that kind of input into your psyche to be able to do stuff.
Yeah, and that was a very solution-based interaction there. Like they immediately put a process in place to improve their shooting.
Oh yeah.
Just based on that, it wasn't arguing about, well, we haven't had much time at the range, or like, well, it was that day, it was windy, or whatever.
Right.
And I bet that transfers over into civilian life, especially in business, that to be able to think solution based when that enlisted, when they come out, that carries them, I'm sure, far.
Yeah, there's a lot of competition set up. When I was in armor in the cavalry in Germany, and 11th Armored Cav Regiment during the Cold War, so way back when, and table eights, they call them, where you're running your company, your tanks down these to shoot for accuracy and everything else. I mean, it's good to, to get a high score and to come back out the top gun or something like that. I mean, these are all good things. You don't want to say, hey, we just went to war and I survived. I guess we trained pretty good. Right?
Right.
So, yeah. So, it's good to have these kinds of, the training is important. So, like, even for us at StealthPath recently, to transfer that over to a couple of things that we've gone after and we want. We recently won the IBM's new Think, Build, Grow competition, and it was a global competition. So winning that was a big deal for us, and introducing zero trust and artificial intelligence, working, with some IBM folks on coming into that. But that was a big deal for us, and we just turned in last Friday application to compete for Pace Pilot, which is a big automotive news recognition that we actually were recognized last year as an honoree. Same thing, we want to be able to, and it does come down to some writing and everything else, but the bottom line is you're really echoing your actual what you're doing and how you're impacting the automotive industry, or with IBM, how you're leveraging artificial intelligence into something, that's going to move or progress society. So how you write all that up, but that's good for the organization. I mean, that, it's interesting, when you're, you can talk about things all day long, but when you have to start writing a paper about it,
Yeah.
you get more clarity. How does that sound on paper? What are we actually doing? When you start writing it down, I said, oh, we need to probably write that differently. So I think those are good exercises for the organization to kind of solidify almost like a milestone where they're at. And what are we doing? How do we say exactly what we're doing? And it's a collaborative process, because you don't have one guy just writing and sending it out. So I think that's part of the glue. I think the collaborative piece that I think helps us out is to write some white papers. We're looking at, proposals. Guys are writing proposals. They're defining what they're doing to solve problems. I think there's huge benefits from that.
Yeah. I mean, that's even, I do something similar to that with the podcast, right? When people ask me, well, what's it about? I can tell them. But then if I had to write them an email about what it was about, then it's like, because I can say a bunch of stuff in about 3 minutes, and I think I have a way of like being energetic about it, and people, they get what it's about. But when you have to write that down, first of all, you don't want it to be terribly long to where someone's never going to read it.
You probably you need your own little mission statement.
Yeah.
And, like I had mentioned, like the Joe Rogan hour, or 3 hours or however long it takes. But it's interesting because, you want to make it personal. And Joe Rogan, he basically, he gets beyond the polished finish of people. And that's really the essence of kind of what he's doing. So, and I think it's interesting. It's interesting, Elon Musk had his moments on there. And
he's like smoking weed or whatever, talking about space.
Exactly.
He blew up a spaceship. He's like, well, we got other ones, so it'll be fine. Yeah. I mean, and that's really sort of, I wanted to replicate something similar to that with this podcast. A little bit of how I built this mixed with Brene Brown, Tim Ferriss, David Goggins, some Tony Robbins. Like, what is it that's making you tick? I mean, like even now, like, are you still doing PT, or you have a military family, right? You have daughters that are also in the military.
Yeah.
Was your parents and all that too?
No, my parents, not really. My dad was 2 years in during the Korean War, but that was it. Of course, my grandfather came over. It was in World War I as a doughboy, and then my two uncles served in the Navy during World War II. But there was no career military, so I was really the first. And then both my daughters got accepted to West Point, and one served in Iraq, one served in Afghanistan, and they got out. They're pursuing their careers and families. And my son-in-law, also a West Pointer, of course, just by proximity, I guess, is where they met each other. And, he spent 10 years and very successful guy. My father-in-law was a career military, which is interesting. Okay. So my wife was a military brat. But yeah, you asked if I still do PT. Yeah, I do. As you get a little older, and you just gotta, be smart to sometimes tone things back. But I also play competitive racquetball when we were playing before COVID. Was avid runner. Yeah. And did some spinning here once in a while. Now I do spinning more often because it's more COVID friendly. Yeah. But yeah.
You have a Peloton and you get in all that? You did?
Yeah. I did. I wanted the experience, and when I was able to, shut down my gym membership, and that pretty much paid for the Peloton. So
yeah, it's good stuff.
Have at it. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I was telling you the other day, I'm running 40 races before age 40. Or that was I'm going to do it. I'll figure it out.
40 marathons or 40 10Ks or?
I think the average run has been 10Ks. Okay. Right. So I did this thing where I said, hey, I'm going to do 40 races before age 40. And then I progressively, in good David Goggins fashion, made it harder as I went along for some reason. And people are like, what are you doing? Like, no one knows about this but you. So I had all these rules that were around it. But I think, what I found was the length of race that I can find more of in this area will be the 10Ks. Okay. Right. So I've done a couple of half marathons. Good. Big Spartan race runner. So I've done the trifecta was 2018, and
any triathlons or biathlons?
I do want to do a triathlon, and I wanted to ask you about that too. I talked to a couple other folks that run some companies in the area. They do triathlons, and I wanted to do it because I thought, here's this hard thing that I can set out in front of me and accomplish it, and I'll probably learn a lot about myself along the way. And I have been learning, and part of the training is that, physiology and psychology are pretty interrelated. Mm-hmm. And I think that if we hold tension in our mind, we can hold it in our body too. Likewise, pushing through some of those inflection points and those thresholds psychologically, we do a lot of the same thing physically too, and they seem to be intertwined.
It's interesting you talk about physical fitness because, at West Point, that's like one of the pillars. They have, the leadership piece is great, but athletics and then academics is the others. And, the athletic piece, I think they put a big emphasis on it because of the competition, not only keeping yourself in shape, but the mental kind of gear that you have to develop. So, that's carried over for me. I think it's healthy. I think, you're doing something for yourself, especially this day and age when you're doing business. I mean, you can work 25 hours a day if you want, and you don't have to get up, and there's plenty to do, and you got basically virtually all the resources you want on your laptop, and you can go. I think it's, you need to stop. I mean, when I do PT like once a day, try to get an hour in, if I can, it's, you need to do it for yourself. You have to sustain your energy to run your company. So being in shape, both mentally and physically is a big deal. And so it's easy to get that COVID-19 wrapped around your middle there, or on your fanny. This has been the big test is, you're before you were a couple steps away from the kitchen in the office. Now you're a couple steps away from the kitchen at home.
Right. And the couch and the,
the TV and
everything else. Yeah. I mean, it's so even with the triathlons, folks have said,
takes discipline to train. Mm-hmm. So it's not just the event. The event's probably the easiest part.
That's the deflation. Yeah. It's like all the build up to it. I was talking to someone else. We were talking about skydiving and how it was similar, where it was like the experience of it was way different from what we made it out to be in our minds.
Yeah. I've done.
Have you?
Oh yeah. I got like 87 jumps.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean,
it's great.
It's an amazing feeling. But from the ground, someone telling you, let's go up in this plane that works just fine and we're going to jump out and hope that this piece of cloth is going to take care of everything.
Right.
Sounds like I don't want to do that. Right. And we were talking, we did DC skydive. There's another guy.
Was it Tandem?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. And it was fun. And I've done it multiple times. but it was just very different from what I thought it was going to be. And they said the same thing about training for the triathlon, that it actually isn't about hurting, right? When you're training, you want to get just to the point where you might be sore the next day and then back off.
That's right.
Because it's about consistency. The idea is to make sure that you can work out every day and sustain a certain level every day. Now, that level will probably go up the more you do it, because the object of the race is to finish.
Yeah.
Right? 3 separate events. It's not just finish first, and then you can worry about whether or not you're going to
start tightening it down. Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, you're right. And I mean, that's in the military. You take that in, and I not to completely divert back to that, but the training. You're right. You have to recover, sleep, recover, and do more stuff the next day. In the military, you don't always necessarily have the convenience of doing nothing and resting all day. So, but you got to be smart about it. And I think that for me, when I came into the Army, and especially in Special Forces, where you really get in touch with the kind of, how the cycle of your body and your food, what you're eating, how you're sleeping, what activities you're doing. You really get into, because you're always running.
Yeah.
Okay. You're always lifting weights. You're always doing some kind of PT. Like Friday was, ultimate football, we're knocking guys' shoulders out of their socket and stuff like that. But no, I think that it's good that I always looked at balance and consistency, trying to sustain it, because it is about doing something like that, sustaining. I remember going on these marches and things like that, and I didn't know about this until I read about triathlons. But you needed, it was good to have a drinking program and an eating program while you're doing something. So I found every 20 minutes, I'd drink some water, whether I needed it or not. Turns out at the end of the hour, at the end of the hour and a half, I was doing I felt great.
Yeah. Okay.
And you weren't getting dehydrated. And then at the every 30 minutes, I take a bite of a granola bar and something like that. So that was, I was kind of triathlon training, but that's the, sustainment, and being able to be strong at the end.
Yeah, and that's a lot of awareness. Yeah, I just heard you speak a lot about some awareness of learning your body, learning the cycle of your body. And just being able to humble you. I'm not thirsty, but drink it anyway because you're going to need it. And this is just how your body works. Or for me, I do a lot of CrossFit. And sometimes I can get into that mindset where, I feel like I want to do it, right? And I want to do it and make it harder than it has to be, because that's somehow going to prove that I did it better. Or that, I don't know where that comes from. Right.
It's good when you're young to do that.
Yeah.
When you get older, you break something,
Yeah, I'm pushing 40. There's no reason to do this. There's no medals waiting for me anywhere. And even with those runs I was telling you about, the question is, what if you get to 38?
Yeah.
Then what? What if you did 38 by 40?
Yeah.
For me, I'm well, I'll just do 41 before 41 and just change the rules and make it
there you go.
Different number.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Increase the,
Well, it's good to have those kinds of goals. My son-in-law does that with I think 15,000 high mountains, for feet. And there's how many 15s are in Colorado? They're out in Colorado, so we did 15s here, 15s there, and trying to reach it, and do that. That's kind of cool to do.
Yeah. They there's a run called, I think, 10K at 10K, so it's a 10K run at 10,000 feet.
Oh.
But why do you think we do that? Why do we pick these round numbers? It's I'm 30. I'll be 38 this year. Why did I pick 40? Why not 39? Or why not? Why the end cap?
We think like that in increments, decade increments, or 10-year increments, 5-year increments. Unless you had something big happen when you were. Like my dad did this by the time he was 39. I want to do it by the time I'm 38 and beat him. Something. Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, someone else introduced me to a book called When by Daniel Pink. And it's kind of, it's centered around why do we start diets at the beginning of the year?
Oh.
Why not just the 17th of any random month, just change your diet, stop eating this or start eating that?
Yeah,
Why does it got to be, oh, well, I'm going to make this change. No one does anything new on a Thursday. I'm going to wait till Monday next week because it's the first day of the week and I start fresh. And it's why is that psychology in there? And where else does that trickle out into what we're doing on a daily basis? What kind of stuff do you read? You said Wall Street Journal, but
I always read the Wall Street. I like the Wall Street. Right now, I'm reading a book called Modern Warriors by Pete Hegseth from I think he's with Fox News. So it's interesting trials and tribulations of some soldiers that have gone, either lost a limb or done something valorious over there. It's a real personal take on that, and at the same time, I read like a balance of stuff. The other book I'm reading is a guy named Thomas Siebel, who is I don't think they say, I don't know if he runs a company called C3.ai. The book's called Digital Transformation. It's a multi-billionaire, almost like the father of AI in a lot of ways. And so that's a really interesting book, kind of gets you up to speed these days if you are wondering what, AI is doing, what do you call it, blockchain, and all these other things, all these other terms and what's going on. The one author I really like is a guy named Michael Lewis. He wrote The Blind Side, Moneyball. Great book that he wrote, I found, was called The Undoing Project, about two Israeli professors who won the Nobel Prize on really the psychology of humans and, how they think, what are our tendencies. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
So those are, I like a variety of stuff, but like Malcolm Gladwell, guys like that. And
you just mentioned blockchain, and every time I hear blockchain, I don't know why, but it makes me think of cryptocurrency. Did you get into any of that, or?
I didn't. No, I
guess being in the cyberspace, you probably have a different opinion about.
Well, we're working blockchain in our solution, on some of our solutions. So it has some great effect, in that case, on what we're trying to do with it. But if you look at it from investing, you're really, it's like Vegas. You're still, it's Wall Street, it's Vegas, it's, you're taking a risk. Yeah.
Everyone I know that's gotten involved with it, they just remind me of other people that I know that are in like 7 different online poker games at once. That's just what they're talking about this coin and this coin and this coin and this coin. And it just reminds me of those folks that are just like,
yeah, it is a risk. And, look, you might want to, take a couple grand and play with it. As long as you won't lose sleep over losing it. And, you might enjoy it. It might be, your gateway drug into doing more. I don't know. But
with some of the stuff you mentioned just now, you're talking about someone who may have been the father of AI, and being in the space that you're in and just seeing. There's different types. Like intelligence is one of those words it's kind of like, it's like saying you're a doctor. Well, what do you do? Are you an optometrist? Are you a heart surgeon? Are you this or that? Right. Engineer? What does that mean? Do you electrical engineer? This kind of engineer? Same thing with intelligence. But looking at some of the stuff that AI is really doing, and even AI is one of those terms, right? What does that actually mean? Does any of it scare you?
It's really interesting you asked that question because I wrote my thesis at the Naval Postgraduate School back in 1997 on artificial intelligence and foreign policy decision making. And so that long ago, and it had a lot to do with the kind of challenges that our leadership is going to have in the future and how artificial intelligence might help them, and reduce the barriers that they are dealing with and things like that. The one of the ultimate questions was, will the president ever, turn to an artificial intelligence solution or entity to make a decision on whether to push the button to send nuclear missiles, So I don't think so. I think the biggest thing out of AI that I learned, and this is when it was really emerging in some very esoteric spaces out of MIT and NASA and everything else in the late 90s. It was really starting to come online. Was that you need to look at it as assistant. There's so much more data out there now, and if you have and use artificial intelligence to help kind of funnel that data into something that now you as a human can do and make a decision off of. There's some things that as a human you don't want to do that make the decisions because they're not that important. So you can leave AI, to do that. You can set a set of rules for it to take care of and make that. But ultimately, when I was writing my thesis, is that it just allowed you to move yourself forward in a more expansive way by using AI as an assistant to human decision making.
Yeah, and I think AI is a lot of things. It's like using Microsoft Excel when you when you run those formulas. That's a form of AI, really, because you could have gotten your calculator out and figured out what, whatever number, the standard deviation of this or the cash on cash return of that, or whatever the words are, right? Whatever calculation you're doing. Same thing with, I guess maybe because the crypto was on my mind when we were just talking, but like, you can set up that if it goes below this amount, buy more, and if it goes above this amount, set like whatever whatever you want to do, and that's a form of AI, because otherwise you'd sit there in front of the computer and have to do it.
Right.
Same thing with algorithms and collecting information and then figuring out what it means. I think companies are doing that to sell us T-shirts and pants and whatnot.
Yeah, I think you can be smart about it. I mean, now you can stay focused on something that you really need to make smart decisions of. You can take advantage of this plethora of information that's out there, run an AI engine on it so it can filter it and kind of condense it for you and maybe give you options and make you more effective. And that's, to me, really what I wanted to use it for. There's a lot of, it's really interesting. You almost can parallel that to getting a new phone every year. And you get a new phone, it's got all these new features, and they show you what all these people are doing. I'm like, do people really do that? You're like, are they just playing all these games all the time? It's great features. And so you started talking about AI and blockchain and robotic, and then you go to some of these, businesses, and it's like, it's not as progressive as some of the technology out there. The time it takes for the progression at times to, get into the mainstream, it's great. I mean, we get intoxicated by, all these new things coming up. The big thing next is, quantum and quantum computing, and all that is going to be, change. It'll change. That will really, change our lives, probably extend our lifetimes, because of what it can do in the health industry and things like that. But it takes a little time, And guys, organizations, they get kind of, this is what we're doing. We're set in this way, and then we'll eventually evolve ourselves. Even a lot of big companies are, they're buying little companies for innovation. That's how they're innovating, because it's incubating, because the big companies just aren't as necessarily always that nimble.
Yeah, I mean, and what it would take for their capital investment and time, really, to set that up in-house and go through the trial and error that this company has already done.
Yeah.
And gotten good at it. Just doesn't. It's better to acqui-hire all of those people and try your best to assimilate them into your culture.
That's been a tough gig for a lot of companies, because we're going to fit you into us, and you, in the small companies, you don't want to break up. Actually, their culture is their success.
Right. Oh. Yeah,
Okay.
like you guys. Like if you were to get acquired by pick a color,
Big company, yeah, and then all of a sudden you become like a Microsoft guy. And then you got to fall into their, what's their playbook, what's their, their game plan, and so I think that over the years, some of these companies have gotten more cognizant of that and have leave these companies off to the side, let them continue to, take advantage of that kind of performance.
We were talking earlier about when you start writing things down, how it looks differently, it frames your mind a little bit differently and stuff like that. Do you journal at all?
I wouldn't say I journal. I carry a notebook around. I track every meeting I have. I'll write the highlights of that meeting. I'll even maybe color it with a highlighter if it's important and I want to come back to it. That's pretty much how I keep track of it. I wish I did journal. I had a very good friend of mine who was on the stock market, and you're making split decisions all day long. You don't get a chance to think. And I was always very envious of him, because at the end of the day, he'd stop and he'd spend about, half an hour or so and just kind of go over what he did, what went down, because he's preparing for the next day, because it's so instinctive, so he's really reflecting on, what went down that day. And I've tried to push myself to do that. I probably instinctively, and maybe we all do that, but he actually formalized it, and he just cut out some time. What did I do today? Why did I make these decisions? What was the market doing? What was that? He was doing that kind of so the next day when he was back in combat on the floor, it's so instinctive. He knows what he's doing. But I thought that was brilliant to be able to reflect on that and kind of move his thinking and his own personal, tendencies and education along. Yeah. So that to me is what I wanted to try to do, is to, if I call that journaling, but more reflective. Some people do meditation, and they do it different ways, and that's one of the ways they do it.
Yeah, I mean, I do. I have a morning routine where I try to wake up at the same time every day, and it includes a couple different things, and journaling is part of that, meditation is part of that. But there seems to be something different. Maybe I'm just like that. When I write something down, it becomes more of a part of me. Like I remember it better.
Sure. I think it's important. I'm not telling everybody to journal. I mean, I write things down. I just seem to make everything seems to be clear when I start writing a paragraph or a page or what we just did or what we're getting ready to do. Like I said, my buddy, he was doing it. Things were going so fast. I just thought it was so smart to stop and just kind of take note of, why did I do this? Why did I buy here? Why did I sell here? What were the intricacies of that? So I think all our lives have the opportunity to do that, and just got to make time to do it. But
well, that's the hard part. When I first started, I was like, I don't have time to do that. And then I realized it doesn't take much time to do. And then I probably spent more time screwing around with my phone than I did, to do it. And sometimes, but so when you started, so this is a startup company. That's got to be a vulnerable position to be in, to say, hey, I'm going to leave a good thing.
Oh yeah. Well, I came to this company. It was started up in 2017. I came to 2019.
Okay.
So kind of the first part of the company was run by the founder, and the founder this is his fourth company. So he kind of had a magic ingredient, and he studies megatrends. So he would be out studying big intersections in the future, and then he'd see, hey, I want to create impenetrable cybersecurity. So he brings on a team of engineers. They develop the technology, they patent the technology, and then you go through market validation. So right now, when I came on board, the technology was there, but we needed to get it more oriented to the market. So I had to bring in some people. We had to look and see what the market needed, where the white space was, and we started orienting the inventions and the solutions that were coming out, kind of what we wanted to be. And then what emerged out of that was zero trust. The zero trust concept became important. And then the other was a lot of the white space out there right now that we are focused on is the Internet of Things, 5G, OT, operational technology space. So everybody, when you talk about the IT, cybersecurity, you're thinking laptops, you're thinking cell phones. We're more on the machine-to-machine space. All these sensors are now coming out. A lot of them don't have any native security on them. So if you think at your house, you might have a Nest thermostat or a Ring doorbell. The security on those is maybe not that great or existent. You have a Samsung, refrigerator, and it's talking back to Samsung and say, hey, I think the filter is getting low on the water. Send them a note. So those are all areas that we see as white space because the amount of IoT devices, sensors that are coming out is growing by a 25% CAGR over the next 5 years, 10 years. So you're talking about billions and billions of these sensors, and a lot of them, they don't have any security around them. So our StealthPath that's our focal point. That's the white space that we're answering the mail with. And we have a spectacular solution that works at a very granular level. So what happened during SolarWinds would not have happened if if our product was being used.
Yeah, I was smiling almost from ear to ear when you were saying that, because I swear I had that same conversation, and they're like, "Oh, you're crazy. What are you talking about?" And I was like, "Yeah, I mean, like, you have a camera in your hat, like,
yeah,
you can hack that,
yeah,
like." And they were like, "Oh, but who would want to do that? Why would they want to?" I was like, "I don't know, but you can."
Yeah.
I went to get cable, and they were like, "Oh, we can give you a camera to put inside your house." And I was like, "Why would I do that?" I was like, "Oh, it's easy. You just connect it to the internet. We'll upgrade your internet to a faster speed. You can have this camera." And I was like, what could I possibly do with this? So when you're not home, you can be safe. Like, if I'm not home, what are you talking about?
I am safe, yeah.
Yeah. And they're like, "Oh, but in case anyone breaks in," I was like, "So I can have a music video of watching them steal all my shit?" Like, why would I, like, and I was like, "Well, who else is looking at that camera?"
Right,
and they was like,
right.
"Oh, no one." I
Yeah.
was like, okay.
Sometimes people have them because they have a babysitter there, because,
Yeah.
this day and age,
And the nanny cams, and I
Yeah,
guess
yeah.
in that, so you're talking to a guy,
or dogs, your
Yeah.
animals at home, are they in distress, whatever. No, I think you need to think about it like you just did, we're being bombarded with these conveniences and solutions, and you got to look at your life and your lifestyle, and you got to decide, hey, yeah, this makes sense for me. I have a sick dog at home. I want to, keep an eye on him, or the guy who's delivering, who's stealing my Amazon boxes off front.
Have you seen these
front.
videos?
Yeah.
From the ring.
Well, the one that you need to see is the guy who sets them up, and they open it up and it blows up. And it spreads sparkles like glitter all over the inside of their car, and it sends out a beacon so he can go pick it back up.
Really?
Yeah, because they throw it out the window.
Right.
It's terrible that people are doing that.
Yeah.
And there's all kinds of different reasons to try to hedge that.
Yeah. Well, I was asking earlier about that vulnerability and getting into something new, because I wanted to ask you about. I call it the jumping off point, or it's just a turning point. And the way I try to describe it to people is, you're doing something that you know that you can no longer do, but you're unsure what to do next. And that's a very, I've been there personally. You can get there professionally and personally. What's an experience of yours that?
Yeah. A lot of times, even in this job, you're trying to figure out what's the next step, or something's just not moving the way you wanted it to. We're trying to do what we call a friends and family. We're trying to test some of our products with some people, and it just seems going slow. Like what's going on. I think in something to thread through, kind of when we originally talked, opened up this discussion about engineers becoming leaders. I think that you can't ignore the importance of a network. Of building a network, of being exposed to how other people are solving problems. In this DC area here, which is really growing as a technology hub in a lot of ways, all the conferences that are going on, they have the Potomac Officers Club, they have all these different clubs that you can go to and be a participant in. So that network is important, because when you do get a kind of stuck, you can reach to call it your go-to guys, your kind of little inner circle,
or mentors.
Exactly, and talk about it. See what they might think. And I set that kind of group up in my own company for me, and I have my own internal senior technology panel. So there's 4 of us, and each guy has different experiences, and so allows me to address situations and problems, etc. And it's not limited to that small group. But it allows me to then, I can also reach out to other, contacts I have in town that I've known through the years, and just get their thoughts on stuff. So I think that's extremely important on everybody's development, is, who their reach back is to their group. And it's not about, I'm going to go to these meetings and collect 1 million cards and everything else. It's really about, talking to some people, finding out, developing a relationship with these guys that you trust, and that they have good thinking, and that kind of stuff.
It's about asking for the help, asking for advice from people who've been there and know what they're doing, and it doesn't have to be a one size fits all. I think that,
and it's both sides. They'll come to you, and they'll ask. You want to have that. Kind of trust and respect and credibility with some of the people that you talk with.
Yeah. There's people that I would consider to be mentors in my life that I meet or I talk to probably once every few months. It's never like but it's when something comes up. Either they have a question about something involving commercial real estate or something else that I do, or maybe a podcast or so on.
Yep.
And same thing. And then I have different people in my life that I would consider mentors for different reasons. You mentioned how it's a diverse group, and it's not only just that group. I've got guys that are early 40s that have a wife and kids, right? So they're kind of the guys that I look to for that sort of relation, because they're making it work. They've got a healthy relationship. They still have these kids. Nothing happened to them yet, so they're still going,
Right.
So, and then I have other, guys that are just clean on their finances, or, women, that are just know how to dial in on budgeting and doing stuff like that. I have one that I'm thinking of, and she's just fantastic at it, right? She's a financial advisor. It makes sense. But
I've been enjoying this at my age, and later in life here, and I've got friends that have tremendous amounts of experience. They've some gone through ups and downs or gauntlets, and and some experience in commercial, experience in government work, and or were former government and now commercial, and so it's it's enjoyable because you get the wisdom factor. You devolve wisdom, and it's just so it's always fun to kind of tap into something like
Well, I mean, I've really been enjoying our conversation. I think I can probably sit here and talk to you all day, but I know
then I get into the war stories, and you don't want to hear those.
Yeah. Well, for anyone listening who heard you talk about StealthPath and wants to get some more info from you, and or even just wants to grab coffee with you and learn more about maybe they're transitioning out of the military.
Yeah.
How do they get in touch?
Yeah, easy. I'm on LinkedIn, so that's easy, and my contact information is on LinkedIn. StealthPath is we're updating our website here in the next probably week or so that's going on. But it's easy we have a contact through there is easy.
Yeah.
So I'll be more than happy to help anybody coming out and transitioning from the military. I've already worked with some folks. I'm a member of the foundation station, helps Gold Star kids, parents that were killed in the special ops space, and they help them out. And a member of the Green Beret Foundation, and really you don't have to be a member of a foundation to help anybody coming out and assist them in the transition or help them with resumes or how to interview and things like that.
All right. Well, thanks so much for sitting down and having a chat with us.
Thanks, Phil. Thanks for the invite. Take care.
Thanks for listening to DC Local Leaders. We'd love to connect with you. Find us on LinkedIn and YouTube by searching DC Local Leaders, on Instagram at DC Local Leaders, or our website, dclocalleaders.com. You can find the podcast on Spotify, iTunes, Google, or wherever you find great podcasts. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. If you're a business leader and have questions on your lease and how it impacts your business's opportunities to grow, or have questions about the market, you can reach Philip directly at philip.nathram@transwestern.com. He'd love to speak with you. Until next time.